Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alberto Fierro, the Consul General of Mexico, and I'm very happy to be today with our guests, Hugo Arellano and Benjamín Sánchez Lengeling, to talk about triggering transformation through science as part of our conversations with Mexicans in New England. These weekly webinar series is organized with the help of our wide network of Mexican scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, researchers, and educators living in New England, and help us bring awareness to the important contributions our community is making here in this region. Hugo Arellano works at Novartis Venture Fund, a division that is in charge of evaluating opportunities of investment in medicine and biotech. Before assuming his current post, Hugo worked as a researcher at Novartis in the area of chemical biology therapeutics, where his main focus was studying the influence of the microbiome in tumor development. He was also a fellow at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Hugo led as co-director the Clubes de Ciencia México for 6 years and now part of the board. Benjamín Sánchez Lengeling is a research scientist at Google Brain since August 2019. He studied a BS in mathematics and computer science at Universidad de Guanajuato. Benjamín obtained his PhD in chemistry, computational science, and engineering from Harvard University last year. His research centers around using machine learning techniques to build data-driven models for prediction of molecular properties and generation of new molecules and materials via generative models. For him, education has been truly a transformative experience. He dedicates part of his time to 2 projects, of which he is a contributor and also co-founding member, Clubes de Ciencia México and RIIAA Conference, a summer school in Mexico. So welcome both of you, and thanks for accepting to be with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks, Alberto.
Yeah, so tell us about your backgrounds. I read some things, but I think it would be best to hear it from you. Why and how did you both get to Boston, and why are you still here?
Yeah, Benjamín, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I arrived to Boston because of a PhD program. It was at Harvard, so Cambridge. But I wasn't planning on going to Boston, but I think they have really good schools. I was looking for a graduate program, and there's great education and great science if you wanna here in Boston, right? And before that, I think it's for me, it was always important to pursue science and study science, and also figuring out how people use it. And I think exactly here is where everything is happening, right? I currently work in Cambridge, and this is where I'm working for already a year, and I think it's just a great place to meet a lot of people and that are just on the cutting edge of a lot of things, not just science, but also politics, economics. There's a lot of stuff happening.
And where are you working now?
Yeah, so I work in Google Research as a research scientist.
Sorry.
Yeah, I work.
Sorry.
I work on also understanding chemistry, but now from sort of an artificial intelligence lens.
Okay, thank you. And what about you?
No, I mean, I have to agree with Benjamín. I mean, Boston is sort of the hub for a lot of the things that we're doing. I was fortunate enough that fortunate or unfortunate, because I haven't lived in Mexico for a while, but I've, been moving around the world in different educational opportunities. And, when it came the time to choose where to do a PhD, Boston, I was lucky to be accepted into Harvard, same as Benjamín, a different program though. And really it's hard to say no, because here you have the ability to research with the people that are really pushing the field forward. There really is there's really nothing after what you're trying to do, because you're the one that's creating that. And then Boston's a city that sort of a roller coaster for me. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it, particularly around February, right when it's cold. And I've tried to escape the city many times. After graduate school, I looked for other opportunities. I actually thought of going back to Mexico at some point, but the city just kind of draws you in. I'm in biology, and I'm in translational aspects of biology, in how to create some things that we can eventually bring into the clinic. And I think for Boston, it's hard to beat maybe San Francisco, but in terms of the clusters of equally minded people that are sort of open for discussion, open for creation, I don't think you can get away from the city. And I think that's one of the reasons why, one, we came here to begin with, and two, why we haven't left.
Okay, so you both landed here and landed exactly in what you wanted, and with the type of people you want to be working and discussing and innovating. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
and in addition to that, it's like the resources are here, because I think sometimes there's other places where there's good people, but I think the resources are unique in this space. Yeah,
there's lots of venture capital and huge bio firms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something also I appreciate is I grew up in Guanajuato, which is kind of a small city, and
in
for
Guanajuato
me,
City?
Yeah, Guanajuato.
Wow.
So for me, I really like small, medium-sized towns or cities, and I really like that I can grab a bicycle from Cambridge and get to downtown Boston in 20 minutes, 25. If you're in another city like Los Angeles or New York, it's so huge. You need a car. So for me, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Mexico in that sense that in Guanajuato, you can just walk everywhere. Everything is like, kind of like very small in a way.
See, I'm more selfish than Benjamín, because I'm from Mexico City, so I like it big. But for me, Boston, I think one of the things that makes it attractive beyond just the resources, the biotech, the pharma, et cetera, is that I think the culture of the city is one that sort of promotes the sparking of ideas, right? I think if you look at people that look at what creates innovation, a lot of it is sort of this, they call it like the sex of ideas, right? Where you basically have people from very different backgrounds, from very different sort of ways of looking at things. And it's not like you meet with them in a class, but really you meet with them over a beer, over some coffee, over a friend's party. And I think Boston provides that unique environment, right? That, I can walk 3 blocks away over to Benjamín, and we can have a chat about, how some molecule can be made to fit in some pocket with AI. And then I blocked in another direction, and I can have a discussion about new immuno-oncology drugs, or we can just have a fun meeting about some thought experiment with some other friends. And I think that's not only, it's rare to find places where you have that breadth of knowledge, but not just that, but the willingness to discuss things, right? I think in Mexico, one of the things that really attracts me to being here and why I have stayed is that in places like Mexico, people are really, really smart, right? At UNAM, at Tech, et cetera. But you often find that there are some, people are not willing to engage as readily or as freely as they are in Boston. And I think that really makes it a unique city. And I think that's part of the reason why Benjamín and I continue to geek out in our respective fields here in Boston.
Great. And I'm sure you are very, very bright, and that was why you were also able to find a job here. And I think that happens too in Boston, that people that are good find the way to be here. Yes.
It's true.
So Hugo, in 2016, you were awarded with the Dean's Community Service Award from the Harvard Medical School, thanks to your work with Clubes de Ciencia. Benjamín, you also have worked in Clubes de Ciencia. Congratulations for that award, and for what I understand has been a wonderful project. But tell us about it. What is Clubes de Ciencia? How did it all start? What are the main areas in which it focuses?
Yeah, so thank you, Alberto, for that. I should say that it was an award that, I was fortunate to receive it, but it really was symbolic of the work of all of us. And it was really an award to the whole organization, because, this was really something where, even people that, have long gone from Boston, but were there at the beginning. And I think I'll let Benjamín talk about the beginning, because there were many beginnings in Clubes de Ciencia, even long before before we all got to Boston. Benjamín had been thinking about ways of delivering education in Guanajuato, and I'll let him talk about that. But, for us, it was sort of, it was a bunch of us here from Mexico that we were wondering exactly what we're discussing before. How can we bring this way of discussing, this way of addressing science, and this way of really experimenting and experiencing what science really is, and what beyond science STEM really is to kids in Mexico, right? Like we couldn't go back and do politics or do policy to change things, but we could show them what a life of a real scientist is, and like sort of the joy of figuring out the answer to a question, and questions that are not boring like in textbooks, that nobody likes, and it's a big reason why people, I think, leave science. But one, to really experience what it is, to answer questions that nobody knows the answer to and that are at the forefront of knowledge. But two, also to understand what it is a scientist, right? Like we can talk, we're not, I mean, maybe we're a little nerdy, but we're normal people for the most part. And we have lives and job prospects, et cetera, that a lot of people don't really understand or don't know what to imagine as a scientist. And so, the goal was, one, and sort of set that path for them and those opportunities, but also create spaces where, as we were talking about before, really ideas and trust to discuss things comes from informal relationships that are then formed and bonds are then created. And we wanted to be able to have those bonds formed with students so that by the time they needed some help, or we could mentor them in sort of their next steps in applying for graduate school or what may it be, it could be done in a format of trust and in a format of friendship, right? Of sort of scientific curiosity and friendship. And that was sort of the idea, bringing scientific opportunities to Mexico, connecting students to mentors, but also connecting scientists to scientists, Mexican scientists to Mexican scientific diaspora, so to speak, that was here. And those were sort of the fundamentals. But, underlying everything was just sort of doing fun science.
Benjamín, do you want to tell us a little bit too?
Yeah, just to add to what Hugo said.
And Benjamín was there from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, science club started in many places. It kind of became concrete here in Boston. Everybody was very qualified. There were graduate students, and they decided to do an education science program. And the main idea of science clubs is very applied. We do workshops where we pair up graduate students from the US with graduate students of Mexico. So there's this mentorship between graduate students from different places, but also there's a mentorship on the graduate student to the university or high school students. And so they're very applied science. Like, we don't want to teach mathematics 101 or advanced calculus. We want to teach them how to, like, for example, program a particle system, or we want them to design a telescope or the next microscope, right? So we want them really to think about it. And even though it's very, in a way, advanced science, I think it's more about, for them, finding somebody that works in the space that maybe they never thought that they could be that person, and sort of get that, like, identification. So I think, like, that personal aspect is something that is very important. And that, I think, is what a lot of students get from it. And they also make friends that then they realize they can actually work together and do things together.
Okay. Paulina is with us, who is in charge of innovation at the consulate, and she's always helping me do everything we do in terms of innovation and academics. So Paulina, feel free to get into the conversation, please. Now, I think you started just in one city and now you're in more than 8. How did it grow? How did you get people to put money into it? Was it just like at the beginning was just like a summer experience and suddenly it became a real thing? Is that the way startups happen in Boston and everywhere? Tell us a little bit more.
I think what you need is like sometimes, and there's a lot of ways that they start, but I think you need like a leap of faith. You need to jump. You need to get a little bit wet. So it was mostly like everybody deciding to commit and saying, okay, I'm going to spend a weekend in Mexico, a whole week in Mexico doing this, and let's see what happens. And I think it was just like the camaraderie, like sort of the good feelings that sort of allowed people to just like be like, okay, I'm gonna try this out. But yeah, I think at least with one of the initial science club's iterations, it required Adrian Hinich. He wrote like on Facebook, hey, I'm really frustrated about all these things about science in Mexico. I want to do this. And people just wrote that. And I think that's one way, right? That's one way of doing this, like taking this leap of faith. What do you say, Hugo?
No, I mean, I think Benjamín epitomizes why it worked, right? There's that passion. And I think at the beginning, there was some naivete on our part in that, you know, Adrián, Rogelio, Benjamín, and others, you know, so it was sort of this momentum and saying, we want to do something. And we didn't really think much about it. You know, I think the first clubes that these guys went to in 2014, right? It was pretty much ad hoc. And I think a lot of it was sort of, we just, Adrián in particular, and give him a lot of credit for that, is like he would, any person that he would walk in the room, he would tell you, let me tell you about this initiative that we're trying to get going, right? And that really, and you know, you talked to Benjamín, and there's that passion there, right? And so I think really that got us going. And our goal was just sort of, this is something we want to give back. And it started in one city as a pilot project. And then, you know, that's sort of one window doors. And that's sort of the other thing, right? Like just keep on trying and keep on asking, because you already have the no. The only thing you can do is get the yes. And by that summer, we were able to expand already to 2 cities. And then, you know, the next winter, we're already expanding again. And it was just sort of this phase of exponential growth that we started, and really looking for funding from anywhere that would support us funding, right? I mean, who doesn't want to support education and having our next generation of scientists and female scientists also well supported and well and foster their development?
Hugo, I think we're losing you a little bit. Your connection is not really stable right now. But do you want to continue on what Hugo was saying, Benjamín?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was continuing on what I said, but yeah, like I think passion goes a long way, and being a little bit naive makes you a little bit blind to anything that would tell you, oh no, I should not do this. So, you know, I think sometimes for innovation, it requires a little bit this being a little bit naive, but also just willing to like take a chance. Yeah.
And so I understand that now you are in 8 different countries, los Clubes de Ciencia. What was the logic? Are they all developing countries? Are they all Latin American?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was essentially, we invited people from other countries to do science club, and they fell in love with the program, and they're like, I want to bring this to my own country. And so we sort of help them out so that they can develop it for their country. Every country has its own specific challenges. And so there's Science Club Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Uruguay, Brazil, Paraguay. Oh, wait, not Uruguay, but Paraguay. And there's Science Club España. And all of them came from different ways, but it's essentially somebody participating in Science Club and saying, hey, I want to bring this to that country. And so we work with them. We have a common understanding, and we're a bigger consortium now, Science Club International, where we try to like figure out how we can work together, because that's always hard when everybody has different needs and different aspects. But we all of us have a lot of shared common values. So that's a little bit how it came to be.
Wow. Hugo, can you add? Is your connection good enough? Maybe.
Yeah, and hopefully you can hear me now.
Yeah. Let's try.
Yeah, interrupt me if you can't. If you interrupt me if you can't hear. Yeah, but I mean, you know, I think part of the reason why it was able to expand so much was that I think there was a comment from different parts of Latin America that we had a similar problem, right? Like our education system is archaic. The way we're being taught science is boring and not really useful for the problems that we have to solve as a society now. Either call it in chemistry, administrator, right? It doesn't work anymore. And we will all know that there's a lot of talent, and we were frustrated by that. And I think that's how it expanded. You know, first in Mexico, and we showed that it could be done. And then, you know, as our colleagues here from Colombia, from Bolivia, et cetera, saw that this was possible and saw that this was a way forward, they said, how can we jump on board? And so we had to, again, as a graduate students, we had to figure out how do you create an organization that is international and almost a franchise model, so that we can then expand this model to different parts of the world. And the idea was, like Benjamín was saying, that we didn't know what was needed for Colombia. We didn't know what was needed for Bolivia. And so what we did was we set the basis of what the program was, right? What were our guiding principles, right? One of them is, you know, science, experiential learning, you know, the ability to solve problems and therefore drive knowledge in that way, create strong relationships and relationships of trust, mentorship, and informal growth. And then, you know, sort of supporting people's next steps and personal and professional growth. And with that in mind, you know, we created a framework that then allowed each country to adapt it to its own needs. So for example, Colombia, you know, they felt that, and the organizations that are supporting them, including the Colombian government, felt that they needed to focus on younger populations. So they go in with elementary school kids and secondary school kids. In Bolivia, you know, they thought that the way forward was with people about to enter an undergraduate, about to decide on their next steps for graduate school. And so each country thought of a different way in which they could have the biggest impact. And so we adapted the program to that. But I think underlying your question was, one, that there are common needs across the region, and two, there's a lot of talent. It just needs to find a way to be connected to areas like here that, you know, that have a lot of tools and a lot of resources, like we talked about at the beginning.
And in Mexico, Benjamín, do you have Clubes de Ciencia in Guanajuato? Does it depend on states?
Yeah, I mean, our main bottleneck for having science clubs is, one, having enough people that will help to do the program, because it's run by volunteers for the most part. And two, just also resources. Sometimes that's space, sometimes that's availability of travel, hotels, stuff like that. But yeah, so we're in nine cities in Mexico, and we try to be in cities where there's less science, but where we can still do things, because it's sometimes hard if you want to do science and there's no lab for that. So where we are is we're in Guanajuato, we're in Oaxaca, we're in Mérida, in Veracruz, Jalapa, in Ensenada, La Paz, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. Is that 9? Yes. I think maybe, yeah.
Count, but I
okay, yeah, I think those are it. For example, we have not gone to Mexico City, in part because there's already a lot of things happening in Mexico City. Even though there's probably more resources, we also kind of wanted to, like, the last places that we added was Guadalajara and Monterrey. But yeah, like, we kind of wanted to try to get to places where normally you don't think about it as a scientific place or something like that.
Well, it's incredible that a small idea became an international corporation. I'm really, really, really impressed. We know that we have limited time today, so just to close up, how has COVID affected Clubes de Ciencia? Can they be done by Zoom, or are you waiting until there's a vaccine to continue?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. There's, I think, yeah, we still had science clubs even despite COVID. We had 2 editions of science clubs that are online, and I think one advantage of these times right now is that people are more willing to experiment with new ideas of education. So, like, if you want to really try something out, people are going to be more forgiving about things because, there's a lot of things going on. It can be hard for a lot of people in different ways. We had our traditional science clubs just in an online format, and we had something called Science Clubs Challenge. And so the idea of Science Club Challenge was, let's try to make something more that works, maybe more adapted for online. And so essentially we had like 4 big mega clubs or super clubs around different types of COVID related topics. So we had one around health, public health. We had one around like the actual like biology of the virus, another one about testing methods, and another one around like therapy or just like treatment. And so so it was more, the students had to develop websites and also a YouTube video sort of around their project. And they also had to collaborate with other teams, sort of to like get them like working with other people that they didn't know. And we didn't just have people from Mexico, we had people from Peru, and we also had some people from Bolivia. And so it was kind of cool to see that you had like this team of people in Chihuahua working with somebody that's in Lima and somebody that's in Santa Cruz. And so I think there's like there is some advantage to the online format. It's not the same. It doesn't feel like it has the same heart. You're not in the same place. And often in Mexico, it's like, oh yeah, everybody's like very close. In this case, it is more sustainable because you just require an online platform. If you have family, it's also easier for you to assist or also give a course. So there is some advantages to that. And we also, people that normally have to travel to a city, now we got people from all states of Mexico participating, which is also something very, very cool because it's, there are some states, maybe Tabasco, that doesn't get that much attention around science. And so now they have a chance to like collaborate with other people. So I mean, it's been interesting. It's definitely been hard, but I think it's been harder for a lot of other people. And so we managed to make it work.
Okay. Thank you, Benjamín. What do you have to say, Hugo?
Well, I mean, I think Benjamín put it nicely in terms of what was done. I mean, I think the one challenge that remains, of course, is funding, right? I mean, these are difficult times, and if funding for normal things is difficult, funding for sort of philanthropy and this type of science outreach is not necessarily forthcoming, although it's never easy. But like as Benjamín says, like this innovative models are allowing us to work in these times.
Paulina, do you want to ask the last question?
Yeah. So it was really interesting what you were mentioning, that you opened new programs that were online. So this whole new normality we're living in is allowing people from different countries to work together. And I think this is really it's a really good opportunity for Clubes de Ciencia to have more open doors in other countries that maybe you haven't explored yet. And other states in Mexico that I know that maybe would be really interested in having a program as well. Because I mean, you could have this program in every state in Mexico working. Even though you haven't explored Mexico City yet, maybe right now you can do it with the online programs. So let's explore together.
Let's see what happens. And I mean, I think going forward in the future, we are thinking of like it's having already gone through the online version, there's definitely like something we want to experiment more in the future because it's going to make us more sustainable. I think we want to we don't want to rely entirely on a virtual model, because I think that part of the heart of Science Club is just being there, talking with people. But I think also it's also a way of being more sustainable, which is important if you're like an organization and you want to pay people and you want to like do things right. So I think it's a way that we're like thinking about how to get there. Yeah, I have to go for a quick meeting, but Hugo can like answer a lot of questions also. But thanks a lot, Alberto and Paulina.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and hi to everybody online. Woo.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Hugo, if someone from our audience is interested in contributing as a sponsor, partner, instructor, or student, how can they contact you?
I know that's a good question, and thank you. And we're looking, of course, always for collaborators. So if you're a scientist, a professor, a Mexican just interested in science, or not a Mexican, just anybody interested in science, you're welcome to contact us. We have our website, clubesdeciencia.mx, and we can send you that link so that it gets also posted in the comments, so that it's easily addressable. You can also contact us at our email is pretty easy. It's contact at clubesdeciencia.mx. And again, we can send you that. As well, so that it is connected with this video and with this recording for those viewing later. And having said that, you can also just Google Clubes de Ciencia MX or Science Clubs International Mexico, and it will come up. We're one of the first ones there. And if beyond interested in science, you also want to sponsor us or invite us to, maybe collaborate with your organization, with your company, with your lab, definitely send that message as well. And we'd love to talk to you as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Hugo, for participating. I'm just curious, that my last question is, you got caught with the COVID in Mexico. How was the experience of you usually are here working towards Mexico, and then you were in Mexico working for doing your work here? Are we so globalized that it doesn't matter anymore where you are?
Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. So, I think my job a few months before that changed. So before, I used to be lab-based, right? So I used to be at the bench. I used to be doing a lot of experiments with my colleagues. And then, months before the pandemic, I had switched to a more office-based job. So I was working with strategy group at Novartis. So I think those types of jobs, to me, it was not a big difference, right? I mean, to me, it was basically the same as being in the office. I mean, of course, you're missing the interactions, but there was no interruptions at work, and we were connecting. We normally connect here with people from California, people from Switzerland, to get our normal work done. So I think in some areas, it's almost a seamless transition. Now, especially at the venture fund, our teams are scattered across the world, and we contact with companies that are everywhere. And so I think it already was the normal to use some of these video conferences, but I think now we're even doing good things for the planet, right? Because we're not flying everywhere for these meetings. It was weird though, being in Mexico, thinking about U.S. problems, because you're hearing a lot about the circumstances that are happening in Mexico, which are very different from the U.S. A lot of the health policies were very different. And some of the concerns that people had were very different. So it was interesting to sort of be in that opposite mentality, right? Where you were now immersed in the Mexican context, but concerned about the US as opposed to your normal life where, you're immersed here, but, thinking of those at home. And we had a lot of discussions with colleagues here. There was, of course, some discussion whether the right strategies were taken in Mexico or not, but I was living them. And I was safe. Thankfully, I had friends that were doctors that were safe. So it was an interesting time where you could engage in discussions from a different perspective than if you were here, right? I think the benefit of distance gives you some perspective, but then when you're there, you get perspective, but you also get to experience those things. So it was definitely an interesting time. I hope I can spend many more months in Mexico while working here. And I think that's going to be the new normal, and I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. Well, thanks so much, Hugo, for sharing your experience with us. and I hope that we will continue in touch for many other projects that we know we at the consulate, we're always happy to be in touch with.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to future discussions. And I also thank you for opening up this space. So I think it's a great asset for the community, and it connects us with them. And so, you know, to everybody, also don't be scared to reach out. We're also always happy to talk with anyone. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you. Bye.